How's the Avery Ranch and 78717 real estate market? Well, I'm Eric Peterson, broker and owner of Kopa Real Estate. In this video, I'm going to talk about that, plus some of the more interesting things that I'm seeing in the 78717 and Avery Ranch real estate market in February 2026. Now let's look at the most recent real estate statistics for Avery Ranch and 78717. In January 2026, there were 14 homes sold, which is down about 18% from a year ago. The median sales price was $650,000. Now that statistic says that that's up 14%. The average dollars per square foot, though, at $229 was down almost 10%. And from what I'm seeing in the market, that's probably a better reflection of what's happening in the market than the median sales price. Median days on the market was down 18 days to 30 days. The forward-looking statistics as far as the number of new listings was down 18%, and the number of homes that have gone under contract year to date was 17, and that's down 5.6%. That statistic, though, was up about 10% as of a couple of weeks ago, so we are seeing a little bit of a decline in some of these more positive statistics that we saw earlier in the year. Looking at the active inventory of homes for sale, we're starting out the year a little bit higher than we were already at this point last year. And one thing I've been warning anybody who's contacted me about putting their home on the market in 2026 is that because of the way spring break and Easter work out this year, I expect we're going to see a ton of homes coming on the market in mid-April. And what that means is if you're planning on selling a home in Avery Ranch or 78717, get in touch with us sooner than later so we can figure out when the best time would be for you to get your home on the market. If you are planning on selling your home this year, be sure to sign up for one of our upcoming free home selling seminars. During our seminars, I'll personally talk to you about whether you even should sell your home this year. What is the ideal time to get your home on the market? In terms of make ready, what should you do and what's a waste of money? And how to make your home appeal to the largest number of buyers in our area. Sign up today at kopaseminar.com. And remember, to see more local real estate information in your feed, subscribe to our channel and give us a like, and let us know in the comments what you think is going on. I've got a lot of interesting things to talk to you about so far this year. We've had 5 homes that went under contract. 3 of those homes were homes that were listed with another real estate agent and didn't sell, including one of those homes was actually listed with 4 different real estate agents and didn't sell. So we were happy to get that one under contract, and we'll tell a better story about that after it sells. We also have a lot of great homes that are coming on the market, and we'd be honored to work with you if you're planning on selling your home this year as well. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about is something that's been frustrating a lot of homeowners, particularly people who either converted their owner-occupied property to a rental property and were hoping for a lot of appreciation. Now it's maybe not worth as much as it was a couple of years ago, or somebody that bought a rental property. And so this is something I've never seen anybody else really talk about, but at least the way I look at it is I like to think about neighborhoods in tiers. And so you've got the tier 1 neighborhood, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe on to 10. And what we saw back in 2021 and 2022 is a home that was perhaps in a tier 8 neighborhood was selling for about the same price as a home that was in a tier 4 neighborhood. And the reason for that is that a couple of reasons. One is that there were so few homes that were on the market that buyers didn't have a lot to choose from. The second is that a lot of people were buying homes sight unseen or were just coming here for a weekend, and they felt like they had to buy a house. Otherwise, if they didn't, that home would be worth $50,000. They'd have to pay $50,000 more for it. What we're finding now is that a lot of these buyers are instead renting a place and they're taking more time. And we're not selling homes to as many investors. So the investors don't typically care as much about some of the amenities that an owner-occupied buyer would care about. And what's happened because of that is that also because that buyer, they now have so many more homes in that tier 4 neighborhood that they can buy, that they're buying those homes. And the homes that are in that tier 8 neighborhood are back to selling like you would expect a home in a tier 8 neighborhood would sell for. And that's been really hard for a lot of these owners to accept. And so instead of selling the property when they really should have sold the home, they've kept it because they're waiting for that tier 8 neighborhood to sell like a tier 4 neighborhood again. And I really don't expect that we're ever going to see that happen again. And so if you do own a property like that, get in touch with me. Let's talk about what we're seeing, and I can give you a realistic assessment of what we expect is going to happen to some of these homes in some of these neighborhoods, because a lot of people have kept these properties and they've got all this equity in the home, and they could have sold the house and put it into the stock market or even a money market fund and would have made a lot more money over the past couple of years. And Bitcoin has been in the news quite a bit over the last few days as the prices have really come down. Now, I'm the first to tell you, I don't own any Bitcoin. I don't understand it. Doesn't mean anything, but this is a story about Bitcoin, but in terms of like what you should be expecting from a real estate agent, whether they're helping you sell a home or buy a home. I recently had a sale that involved Bitcoin. The buyers needed to wait to sell some Bitcoin for whatever reason, again, doesn't matter. And the only way but they loved the house that I was selling. And so they wanted to do an extended close. And the Texas contracts, it's very tricky in terms of earnest money. It's usually not a tremendous amount of money that's involved there. Nobody wants to get involved in a legal dispute. So what happened is that I talked to the seller. And I said, the only thing that we've used previously is we've just asked a buyer to release a large number of earnest money to the seller at the end of the option period, right? And me personally, I think that that's reasonable. And so the seller said, yeah, I'd be willing to take that risk then if I was able to get that money up front as opposed to having it stay with the title company. And so we brought this up to the buyer, and fortunately, to their credit, the buyers had a great real estate agent who was also working with them who didn't have like a knee-jerk reaction of being overly negative about this. Remember, my job is to help facilitate transactions. It's not to really make decisions for people. And what I noticed is as I told this story to a few other real estate brokers about some of because unfortunately there's not a really easy way to do this within our contracts. And many of them, they would tell me, well, I would never let my client do that. I would never let them do that. And I thought, that really is a bad attitude to have. And you as a consumer, when you're hiring somebody to facilitate these transactions for, some of the mundane things, yes, I'm just making the decisions, but things like this, you really don't want your real estate broker making those decisions. You want to be presented with the options, and then you're a grown-up, you're an adult, right? You can make those decisions for yourself. And I would have been perfectly fine if the seller didn't want to do this. I'd been perfectly fine if the buyer didn't want to do this. But at the end of the day, we put the deal together and everybody's happy. Seller's happy. The buyer's got an incredible home, like one of my favorite homes that I've ever sold. And so it worked out for everybody, but it never would have if one of the agents involved in the transaction was making the decision on behalf of their client. Other thing that's in the news is there's talk of a crackdown on HB1 visas, and I largely try to stay out of political things when I talk about real estate, but unfortunately, real estate is impacted by a lot of politics and some of the decisions that our politicians and the government is making. And one of those things could be HB1 visas. And so, people have asked me, well, what kind of impact have I seen on this? And up until about a month ago, I said nothing. But this month, or in January, I was contacted by two people who are here on HB1 visas. And I'll tell you one of the stories is that the man and his wife are both here on visas, and they both have lost their jobs. And they can't get another job with a company that's going to sponsor them with the visa process. Okay, and again, I'm not an expert in how the visas work, but unfortunately, they're going to have to sell their house and move out of the country. And to make matters worse is they're probably a little bit underwater on their mortgage to what the house is worth. So where this really becomes a problem, just speaking about the real estate market, is typically when we see somebody sell a house, they're also a buyer of real estate. And so it kind of evens out. We see the increased inventory, but we also see another home being taken off the market. So in this case, if we see a large number of these visa holders having to sell their home and move out of the country, they're not also buying a replacement property. The second thing is, well, if somebody else is on a visa and they were thinking about buying a home, they're probably not buying a house right now. I was certainly thinking about it twice, depending on how stable that they feel. So that's kind of an undercurrent of a little bit of negativity in our real estate market that'll be interesting to watch as we go forward with everything. And so I just thought that was an interesting story that, it's unfortunate for these families who are probably going to have to sell the house and move out of the country. And it is likely going to impact the real estate market in our area. And finally, I just thought I would share some slides about net migration into Texas. I took the family to Disneyland earlier in this year. And when I took an Uber from the hotel to go get some blueberries at the grocery store, my Uber driver told me that everybody is moving out of Texas. That's what he hears. And, I hear a lot of these stories this way. And I just thought I would show you the data that's not really what's happening. Is actually net migration is positive for Texas from the most recent census data. Now, it's not the same as it was in 2021 and early 22, but it is still positive. So certainly that, one of the things that when I talk to people about the real estate market is I say things are a little bit overly negative, and people are creating these ideas that everybody is moving out of Texas and nobody is moving into Texas. And that's just flatly not true. So if you want any information about this, or really want the facts about what's happening on the market, get in touch with me. As always, thank you so much for watching. We appreciate your support. If there's anything that we can do to you, reach out to me directly at 512-791-7473 or schedule a time on my calendar at kopaconsultation.com.